Hello, everybody, and welcome to Party Chat, MinnMax's new Patreon exclusive podcast for everybody at the $5 tier on Patreon. I am Ben Hansen. Thank you for being here. Janet Garcia is also here. Hello, Janet.
Yo, what's up?
Welcome. We're not alone. We're also joined by a bunch of folks from the community. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, these are people in the community that are at the $20 tier, the MinnMax Council tier over there on Patreon. If you jump up to that tier, you can podcast with us every single week. But if you don't want to be at the $20 tier, at that $5 tier, you can still jump in and listen to this Patreon exclusive podcast every single week. We have a lot to talk about on this whole episode, Janet, and thank you for being here, because you are one of the few, one of the proud, you're one of the Marines out there who has finished Horizon Forbidden West. So thank you for plowing through that. If anybody here in the chat, in the whole stages thing on Discord, wants to talk about Horizon Forbidden West, has questions about Horizon Forbidden West, please jump up here, because we would love for you to ask questions to somebody who has finished the game like Janet. So throw a hand in the air if you want to ask Janet something about her experience with Horizon Forbidden West. But we'll be talking about it more on the big episode of the MinnMax Show podcast this week, which is, of course, available in the podcast feed for free for everybody if you subscribe. Oh, great. We got some folks. Just to start out with, Janet, how long did it take you to finish the game?
Oh, I believe it was 35 hours, but I didn't do much side stuff. I was very heavy on side stuff when I first started the game, and then I had a bunch of other work to do, and then I was like, okay, it's due like in 2 days. So I was like, let's try to finish this. And then I mainlined it pretty quickly after that, but yeah.
Okay, awesome. In general, you don't have to put a number on it or nothing, but what do you think of it?
I loved it. I think it's incredible. I think it is better than the first game, and I think the first game is also incredible. There are some parts that I think are not as good as the first game. But on the whole, I think it is a better experience. I love the story. I think the mechanics have like fun ways that they build on top of the established base. And the thing I liked about it the most, I think, outside of how well I think the narrative points and the gameplay high points kind of were in conversation with each other during those like mid to late stages of the game, where it's like, oh my God, what a crazy battle. And then it's like wild plot point. And I'm like, oh man, I'm like physically and emotionally just drained by this whole experience. Other than that, I really liked the ways that it played with your expectations on what you're used to doing in Horizon. So a simple example of that really quick would be like the tall necks. In the first game, it's like, okay, you find a tall neck and you climb it and then you override it. And that's still true in this game, but they like always have some weird angle with them. Like it's some type of odd either puzzle or like thing you maybe have to go back to later. And I really liked stuff like that where I'm like, oh, this doesn't work exactly how I'm used to it. It's like Horizon with lime, except it tastes better than Horizon original.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. It's just for everybody's reference. I'm like 4 hours in. I've been going hot and heavy with Pokemon Legends Arceus to get caught up for the deepest dive, which is happening. We're recording it on Tuesday on MinnMax's Twitch, and then it'll be up on YouTube on Wednesday. So we're going to be talking about the rest of that game and give it the discussion it deserves. But yeah, I've enjoyed my time with Horizon, but I'm a little bored at this point. We'll talk about it more on the podcast, but I'm looking forward to keep going because I just am really starting to sink my teeth into the open world. But hey, Risky Chris P, Catch 'em all Chris, you got a question for us?
Yeah. So I don't want to like hog too much time. I
Please.
have a couple of things, but I guess like the main thing is I haven't played Horizon since launch. And so I know obviously this is a direct continuation. So I'm just curious, how in depth should I go on like refreshing myself on everything? Because it seems like I remember the general plot points, but like a lot of the side characters I don't really remember at all and stuff like that. And it seems like this one is putting a heavier emphasis on them and the narrative in general. So I was just curious how that transition worked between the.
That was my exact question. Thank you so much.
Oh, really? God's grudge. That's funny. Yeah. I also had the exact same thing going in where I started the game and I had that feeling of like, oh crap, I should have watched a YouTube recap. I will say it does a very good recap in the beginning. That's, what is it, Janet? Maybe like 3 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, like a little cinematic kind of opening.
Yeah, just walking through the big beats. Because, yeah, I enjoyed that game. I beat that game when it came out, but that was 2017. So there was a lot of like, oh, I remember some
Which
fragments.
is 20 years ago. So
That's right. Remember like fragments of kind of the old world and how that all worked. But I think it did a really good job setting it up. And then, Janet, I don't know if you felt the same way, but I felt like it kind of threw me in the deep end in that open area because it's kind of like an open chunk before you get to the open world. And in that open world, or in that first chunk that's a little bit more linear, they do a lot more kind of like setting up of more backstory mystery of kind of the old world. And it really felt like, oh, they're throwing me in the deep end again. I felt like I needed more prep just to try and remember exactly what is going on here. But how'd you feel about going into this thing and how fresh you were, Janet?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it feels like this is great for people that just finished the first one because it is such a direct continuation. Obviously, I don't expect, nor do I think you need to like quickly replay the first one or watch like a whole Let's Play or anything. I mean, I think the biggest things you miss out on if you are either coming in new or coming in a little bit colder are like remembering the tribes a little bit more and not getting as lost in that. Like a lot of, I did the review over Kind of Funny, and most of those people had played the game when it came out. So everyone was kind of like, oh yeah, like it took me a second to be like, wait, the Asuram wait, who is this? And versus me, I'm like, oh, Petra, like good to see you again. I remember you from the scrapyard. Yeah, like what's like I was heavy into the lore, which was kind of hilarious because I'm not that kind of player.
Yeah, but you also just played that like not that long ago, right? Like,
yes, exactly. So I'm like, but I played it and I platinumed it. So that's the other thing too. I think if you didn't do everything, like you might have never met Petra. So it definitely feels like it's a bit fan servicey for the people who are hardcore into Horizon and really remembered those characters. That being said, I don't think you feel totally out of water if you haven't done that. It's just some stuff may, I guess, feel a little bit more disorienting for lack of a less dramatic term. Yeah. But, you know, a quick story so far, never hurt anybody. And I think after the first, like, a lot of people remark on, like, you know, it's a pretty sizable game, like 8 hours in or so, not only does that kind of, you lose that feeling, but you also start to get more of the different parts of like what makes this game distinct from the first one. So Ben, you know, I'm hoping, or, you know, I'm curious to see what how your opinion may or may not shift as you go on. Cause a lot of people started off and weren't in love with it and kind of felt like, this is more the same. That's exactly where I'm at. And so I'm ready for something new. And again, getting to the open world, I've started to warm up to it, having like, it's just the first adventure of like, okay, trying to unlock this tall neck. Like it's still fairly early on in that, but it's like, okay, this is the fun. The fun of this game for me is hiding in the bushes, taking down these machines, discovering new towns, discovering new areas. And in the beginning, it felt very, very similar. And like, you know, just on that idea of how lost you'll be for an idiot like me, which I assume 5 of you watching or listening are, it was that thing of like watching the recap and then it's like, hey, here's the sequence where you can go reunite with old friends and talk to them. And just that feeling of like, have I met you before? I remember some characters from the first game, but some of them are just like, you could be new. I don't know exactly what's going on here. So if you want to be intimately familiar with all the characters that you're talking to again, yeah, you can always watch a longer recap. King Prometheus, thank you for being here. Do you have a question about Horizon?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the side stuff. So, Janet, you said that you had to start mainlining to get it done on time. Was the side questing, was the open world interesting enough that you feel like you're going to go back and do it? In general, like how was this quality of the open world, the side content, or if you just play it like a single player straight through the middle, is that fine?
Yeah, I mean, I think either way you want to play it is fine. You know, we had a lot of discussion over Kind of Funny about the leveling of the quests and whether or not, like, if you don't do some of the side stuff, if you'll be under-leveled and that sort of debate. Yeah. I do think that this is the kind of game where point A to point B, even if you're like, I just want to do point A and then do point B, on your way to point B, like, you'd have to try not to do anything else, just in the sense of, like, even just fighting the machines, like, and getting XP from that. So I feel like if you want to mainline, that's fine. I love the side stuff in this game, just like the first one. I think it's super compelling, and I like how it feels very naturally weaved together. One example that I like to point to on that early area is I was collecting these little, like, sort of, I forget their real name, but these like glass emblems that are at the top of these buildings. And when I first started doing that, like Aloy is like, I don't know what this is, but like, I'm going to take it. And I'm like, sure. And then a little while later, I like meet a character who's like a side quest is to get one of those. And then she's like, by the way, if you have any other ones. And I was like, oh yeah, like I've been collecting them for like the last 2 hours. And I really like stuff like that. I will say one thing that is either a fun tease or maybe like a point of frustration for some people, depending on your interpretation, for that beginning area, is it's a lot of like that Metroidvania vibe of, I can't do this yet. gestures to camera, like maybe this is like that swimming I saw in the promotional trailer. So there is a little bit of stuff in that open first area where you'll see something and you can't really engage with it yet because you don't have the tool for it. And that's kind of a mixed bag depending on how you feel about seeing that stuff as a player. But I will say you get most of your tool set like pretty quickly, so it doesn't take long for you to like do another one or two main quests and then be like, oh, I have the thing I need to go back and investigate the thing I saw earlier.
Right.
And then they marked it on the map too. They'll say tool not had yet or whatever, and then when you get it, it'll be like updated.
Gotcha. Starkiller, do you have a question about Horizon?
Yeah, I just played through Horizon recently too, and one of the biggest things that stood out to me was the melee in the first game is fairly bare bones. It's pretty much you got a light attack and a heavy attack, and they encourage you to do ranged. Is melee more viable in Forbidden West? Is it like, do you have actual moves and upgrades and stuff like that?
Yeah, the melee system is definitely more viable. It's definitely better. That being said, it's still not like that good to me. I think it is still the weakest part of the game, which was a little bit disappointing to see that like you did a lot and yet I still don't want to use this. It's still heavily like the light and the heavy attack. The big thing that is different out the gate is when you build up your light attacks, you can like your like staff kind of glows, and then you can do a heavy attack that sort of creates this like blue aura around an enemy's like arm or midsection, and then if you shoot that with an arrow, it does like heavier damage. I think that mechanic is pretty fun, and there's a whole skill tree with like nothing but melee, and I think if you build out that skill tree, you do have a more engaging time with melee. Ultimately, I think the way the game is designed still just heavily favors ranged combat because there's so many enemies, even in like the encampments and things. Like I just don't find myself going. If you could do something like in Ghost where you have like I'm going to call the leader and do a standoff, I think the melee maybe would have shined a little bit more. That being said, there are melee specific pits similar to the like Hunter's Lodge trials that were in the first game, which the Hunter trials are still in this game as well. So if you're into melee and you want to get better and you want to explore that, the game definitely facilitates a way for you to do that with its ancillary content and its skill tree. But I feel like baked into the actual like core game, there's not a lot of melee if you don't really want to do it, which kind of works because it's not that great. There are a few times where there's at least one time later on where you need to do melee, and I was like, oh no, I didn't study for this test. I got through it anyway, but I did feel like, oh man, I spent the last like 20 hours not doing any melee combat.
Yeah. Neil Smith, our mod. What's up, Neil?
Hi. I also had a question about Horizon.
Yeah, take it away, man.
So the thing that really appealed to me in the first game was the depth of the modification system for the weapons. I really liked all the percentages and numbers and I like to get like perfect rolls for things and try and min-max them a lot to get like breakpoints for specific attributes on a weapon. Does that come back in a big way? Does it expand on it at all or pull back on it?
Yeah, you're going to have a lot of fun with this if you like doing that stuff because there's like an insane amount of content in that regard because now every weapon also has the ability to upgrade that weapon up to like at least 3 or if not 4 upgrade levels. So in addition to having like your 2 I'm guessing some weapons do have 3, maybe some have 4. I only went up to like the blue grade this time of rarity. I'll go back and when I platinum get like the purple stuff and the legendary equipment. But even in just like those like green to blue tiers, like you can unlock at least 1 modification slot. So that gives you 2. And then you have, again, like all these upgrades that you can do at a workbench. Aloy has a workbench now. And that's true for like pretty much all of the weapon types. So there's a lot to do in the way of upgrading, not just like your resource stuff with your satchels, which is also a storage system, which is fantastic, where if you have too much stuff, it just goes straight to your storage. So I think the game really does lean more into that layer of customization, which I think is fun. And then on a lighter side, you can also dye your outfits. There's not as much like freedom in the mixing and matching as I'd like. And they still don't have loadouts, which I feel like that should be there. But on that note, too, with weapons, one really fun addition is the Valor attack that you have. So on the skill tree, you can unlock, there's like 6 skill trees, and you can unlock different like Valor abilities, which if you get a certain amount of like, it's not exactly XP, it's like you do certain moves that feed into your Valor meter, and then you can do like a special ability. So like the healing Valor attack or Valor move, this is not like the exact name for them, gives you like a crazy potion that like restores XP and is like way more powerful than any other potion. Or you could do one that like adds stuff to your ranged attacks, or one that like makes you do more damage if you hit a machine part specifically. So I think those things really nicely lean into what kind of player are you and what do you benefit from, or what excites you about the combat system in a really fun way. So yeah, I think that's done really well.
Right on. IanTClark, thanks for supporting me on Patreon. What's going on, buddy?
Hey. So, Janet, this is specifically for you. I know that you just got off of Dying Light 2, which was another big open world game. You go into Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West. Sorry,
West.
I got to get
Exactly.
better at that. But,
No one can keep it straight. It's fine.
Of the Wilds, yes.
so, I'm by no means like a casual game player. Like, that's all I do. Video games is pretty much it hobby-wise for me. But I typically do every single side. If I like the game especially, I do every single side quest. So like you, Jen, I went back and got the platinum for Horizon. And I did right when the PS5 came out. And that took me, I think, and then I did all of the Forbidden, what was the other one? The Frozen Wilds.
Oh, man, yes.
Frozen Wilds, yep.
Yeah. So I did that when the PS5 first came out. I tried to go back and clean up some of my, find an easy platinum or whatever. It wasn't easy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Achievable. So, but again, I did every single side quest, and that's kind of the way I pay homage to a game I like. I do everything if I can, and it's not totally ridiculous. So you went from, I know Dying Light, you said you played it for 30 plus hours.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, where I've been playing Dying Light 2 for 30 plus hours, and I just got to no spoilers, but just got to a section where kind of the map opens up and completely changes.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did 30 hours just to get what I think is a halfway mark. So because I do everything, how do you think this new Horizon game is going to be in terms of like from the side quest standpoint? Is it doable to do within that 40 to 60 hour range, or is it looking like another 100-hour type of deal?
500 hours.
I feel like it's
what are we
going to
talking?
be. Yeah, I feel like it's going to be like 100 hours. Like, this is also me speaking like slightly out of turn in the sense that I have not attempted it. I have not closely analyzed the trophy list because I also sort of want to check, like, is there an embargo on the trophy list? Like, I don't think there actually is an embargo attached to it. But I would urge you, though, to check out, if you're, whether you're familiar or not, Gerard the Completionist does a lot of completionist content. I don't know if he's doing anything for Horizon or if he's announced if he's doing anything for Horizon, but like I think looking at those kind of content creators and seeing that, or even just the how long to beat completionist once that info starts populating. But I would imagine that it is longer than Horizon, the base game, which took me like 60 or 70 hours to platinum, especially just because there's so many, and I don't know, again, like the platinum versus like completionist ding it, because those can be different. Like sometimes you don't need to do everything, but I'd say everything, there's more stuff, and the stuff that you do is like harder, but like in a good way. Like it's more engaging. Like an example of that in Horizon is in the base game and the first game and the second game, there are these things called vistas. And in the first game, you just find them, like you get to them, they're usually kind of high up, and then you just kind of scan them, and then like a little cinematic plays, kind of like a little hologram. In this one, they don't seem maybe as hard to find. Like there was one essentially almost on the ground, the first one and the only one that I did. But to unlock it, you have to they sort of project a hologram of like the old world, and then you have to match it over the current world. So you have to find like where it is. So it's a little bit puzzly. And then other examples of that too, for some like level of collectible or item. I kind of forget what's behind these doors, but I just did them because they were super fun. There's like these old world ruins that you have to sort of navigate, and they're like these puzzle boxes, almost like, not dungeony because they don't have like enemies in them, but the kind of thing where get ready to move some crates around, like figure out how to get this power cell, this one thing. Like I think the things that they have also just take a little bit more time because they are more thoughtfully done and they're more intriguing. Let alone they also have, if you want to totally be a completionist, they have all these, the freaking game that they built, like it's their version of Gwent, but it's not as good. That's in there. And then there's like a lot more stuff to do. And I think the stuff that is there is a little bit more layered. So I think you're in for quite a while, but I think it'll be a good and better time than the first one was. So I'm excited to go back and dig into that once things cool down a little bit more. But I'm probably going to start doing that like this week already because I really want to. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Jen, I saw your tweet when you said something about a power cell in the first game. I thought it was very funny. It was probably in the heat of the moment when you sent that tweet out, but it was very, very funny.
Killing it, Janet. Killing it with those Power Cell tweets. Thanks, IanTClark. Leafeon, the pizza dog. What's your name at this point? Yes, Leafeon the pizza dog, of course. Do you have a question about Horizon?
Dude, yeah, Leafeon the pizza dog, named after Lucky the pizza.
Of course,
the pizza dog from Hawkeye. But yeah,
Dude.
thanks. So I have never actually finished the first Horizon, and mainly because I get bored a lot when I find myself playing it. Recently, I went back to it, just try to finish it, and I got right up to the beginning, right before the end, the beginning of the last quest, and I realized that wow, there's so many logs and audio logs that I just haven't read, and so much of the lore that I just haven't done, and I took a look at it, and it's just so much, and one of my biggest complaints from the first game was the plethora of logs that just have pointless text in them. Here's an ad for, I don't know, some media thing, and it just has no lore in it at all. Just random mugs and stuff. And there's just so much that I try to go through. I don't want to miss any point of lore, but there's just so much pointless stuff. And I was curious, to the extent of audio logs and text logs in the new game, because there's just so much in the first game that I did not want to read or care about, just in the quantity of it.
Yeah, I hear ya.
Yeah, numbers wise, I'm not sure if there's more or less. I think it's probably a negligible difference whether it's plus or minus, which again, I don't know offhand. I will say I was a little bit bummed that they didn't have more of a Deathloop vibe to the information, because I like the world and the lore as well, but it's I'm not going to read all that. It's a very much that cyberpunk text meme of I'm sorry that happened to you, or congratulations, I don't know. It's that energy. And yeah, most of it is the only logs that I really read that weren't I love the ones that they autoplay, with the audio logs that you can just listen to. I always listen to those. The ones you read, the only ones I really read through were ones that were in those ruins, because a lot of the puzzles in the ruins are contingent on reading the logs, but the game kind of gestures to that, so it's not totally out of left field, where maybe you need to find a code for something. So okay, the part of it is in one log, and then the other part's in the environment. Those ones I did read through. I remember too, Blessing texting me some info from one of the logs that explains why everyone speaks English, which I thought was interesting. Ooh. And he's like, "Do you want me to send it to you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because I'm never going to read that. Even if I find it, I'm not going to look at it, even though I scan all of them." So yeah, I wish that stuff was just integrated in a more digestible way. I know some people like reading all this stuff, but I'm sad to say that it's kind of more the same in that regard. I do think the way they do the audio logs though is a little bit better, in the sense that in the first game, I ran into a few instances of the campaign where you clear out an area and they're like, what if we put 8 of these in one small room? And you just got to stand there. I never had a moment like that in this game where I felt like I was just listening to so many and I had no place to walk at all. I feel like they spaced them out in a more appropriate way, at least.
Okay, yeah, because having 10 of them in the same spot,
yeah, it was awful.
It was the worst. You just had to
and then you accidentally stop one, and then you got to restart it. It's terrible.
Yeah,
it was awful.
Well, hey, Leafeon, thanks for your support. Thanks for jumping in, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Right on. Hey, Janet, thank you. Kyle has also finished it. Jeffem's been playing it. We're going to talk about it more on this week's episode of the MinMax Show podcast, which is available to everybody in your favorite podcast app. Janet, thanks for being here. Thanks for being a champion. Thanks for plowing through these games and answering community questions.
Yeah, I hope y'all are enjoying this first 2 months of content, because I'm retiring from video games in March. So it's been a hell of a run. I'll see y'all later.
Bye, Janet.
Bye.
Also, we should mention Horizon Forbidden West. Our copies were provided by PlayStation. Hey, if you watch this and you're confused about what this is on the right, this is from MinMax's Discord, which you get access to if you support MinMax on Patreon, even at the $2 tier. And then, of course, if you're at the $20 tier, you can podcast with us with MinMax Party Chat. And hopefully it's not too confusing. If you're at the $5 tier, you don't get to talk on the podcast, but you get access to this Patreon exclusive weekly podcast called Party Chat. We talked about the Super Bowl. We talk about what we've been watching, what we've been playing. Right, Kyle Hilliard?
That's correct.
As enthusiastic as ever. So if you enjoy this type of content, if you enjoyed MinMax throughout the years, we would appreciate the support, because it's fun to interact with the community and we like listening to the community. Hey, everybody in the community for Party Chat right now, why don't you tell me your favorite thing about the MinMax Discord? Go.
Well, there's so many.
I like
hope you enjoyed, everybody. We appreciate your support. Bye. Kind Content like this exists because of you. Thank you so much for subscribing on YouTube, sharing it with a friend, and especially for supporting MinMax on Patreon. Supporters at any tier on Patreon unlock access to MinMax's Discord, the friendliest place on the internet, where you can compete in game trivia every month to win prizes with our show Trivia Tower. Thanks so much for watching and sharing our stuff, everybody.